Hey everybody, Josh for the media here, and I want to go over some recent news out of Israel as we see the conquest continue. This out of Zero Hedge, Israel's troop occupation of southern Syria to be permanent. This is something that was part of the agenda a long time ago. The finance minister Smotrich went into this in detail before there was this HTS, formerly Al Nusra Front, takeover of Syria, which was prophesized, one could say, by the CIA back in the 1980s in a document we went into as far back as 2018 called Bringing Arms to Bear in Syria, which talked about the exact situation. And now they're going after Christians, Alawites, Sunnis, etc. We have essentially a conquest that continues into what they call the Greater Israel, the Greater Israel Project, which of course is from the Nile to the Euphrates. As we see, Israel bomb nursery schools. Horrifying. Evil incarnate, as I wrote on Exit at World Alt Media, as they go after Yemen's capital Sana'a again for the second time this week, as we see Turkey continue to slam Israel while still trading with them, and of course the obvious control over U.S. politicians by Israel, and of course this propaganda surrounding Hamas, even though Hamas is armed and funded by Israel in the first place. There's so much to break down, but we're going to make this as short as humanly possible today. Before we get into it, I urge people to check those links below and help support us if you can. We appreciate those who've donated to us. We have our gogetfunding.com campaign, which is in the description, and we cannot survive without you. So thank you to those who've helped support us recently. You guys have kept us up and running for months longer, and we still need to raise more money. But my goodness, if it weren't for you guys, independent media would be nowhere, and you'd be stuck with the propaganda from the mainstream alternative and the mainstream media. So again, thank you so much to those who have reached out. We have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribe Star. We have a Teespring store with merchandise, all linked in the description below. Thank you again. Now let's get into this. So Israel's troop occupation of southern Syria to be permanent. The IDF will remain at the peak of Mount Hermon and in the security zone necessary to protect the Golan and Galilee settlements from threats looming from the Syrian side, as the main lesson from the events of October 7th, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz announced Tuesday. And so with that, Israel confirmed it will remain in the territory it has captured in southern Syria as a permanent occupation, which will likely lead to annexation. The Israeli army had moved swiftly beyond its Golan Heights occupation in the wake of December 8th ouster of former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. It has kept expanding since then, citing new threats. Now, as I mentioned before, back before any of this had happened, we went into an article regarding quotes from Smotrich, who is a finance minister in Israel, who called for the Greater Israel occupation of all of the Middle East and all the way through Iraq, from the Nile to the Euphrates, essentially, and then that includes parts of Turkey, and eventually even a bigger expansion into places like Iran. Of course, that has been in the books for a long time. We know Netanyahu has claimed since the 90s that Iran was months away from having nuclear weapons. And then, of course, in recent times, they said weeks away. And then Trump gave Hellfire missiles to Israel as part of his $1 trillion budget, the largest military spending budget in U.S. history, which mostly regards just helping Israel and the annexation of Palestine, and, of course, going after Iran. These Hellfire missiles were used, of course, preemptively against Iran. And then, of course, Iran struck Israel back, which led to the U.S. personally attacking them, despite telling them ahead of time that they were going to attack a certain site so they could move all their missiles. So now they can say, once again, they're just months away from having nuclear weapons. Well, of course, at the same time, we have Smotrich a couple of years ago saying that they want to go after Syria. I believe it was late 2023. And then I reported on the push by him back in the middle of 2024, which then led to what we saw in January this year, December to January, the total takeover, without a shot being fired, they say. And HTS takes over, which HTS is formerly Al Nusra Front and gets a lot of funding from Israel. And by the way, they are very pro-Israeli. They apologize when they accidentally hit Israel. Same with ISIS. It's funny how that happens. While you'd think that ISIS and these groups would be against Israel. No, they're not. They never attack them. And when they do, it's an accident, and they apologize publicly. Because who do they get their weapons from? Same people that Hamas gets their weapons from. Israel. It is the creation of problem, reaction, solution, repeat, the Hegelian dialectic to create justification for all-out war, just like they did with pushing the United States to go to war with Iraq, which is detailed in a book called Deadly Betrayal by Dennis Fritz, which I have behind me on my shelf. Of course, in the 1980s, there was a CIA document called Bringing Arms to Bear in Syria, where they talk about insurgents coming from Turkey, Lebanon, and Iraq into Syria over the borders and taking over the country without a shot being fired to overthrow Assad Sr. at the time, and that they would then go after Sunnis, Christians, and Alawites, which is exactly what happened. And now this group, HTS, is saying they need to take over Palestine. Palestine's bad. How do people not see through this obvious setup, this manufactured crisis? And now they're talking about annexation of Syria. Who saw this coming? All of us that have been paying attention since they've been doing this. Well, since the 80s. I wasn't alive in the 80s. I was born in the early 90s. But nonetheless, since I was about 12 years old, it was typical and it was clear to me what was happening at the hands of Israel and the effect they had on the U.S. through AIPAC and blackmail like Epstein. And that's open record, plea deals, and all sorts of boasting by Epstein himself on that matter. But nonetheless, they'll give us some bullshit on that. There's no list. Don't worry about it. They're blackmailed. Of course, they're not going to release it. Anyway, this is how they're blackmailed, what they're blackmailed for, where then we have Israel pushing the Middle East into crisis so they can say we're the only peaceful ones in the region, even though they're the ones dropping all the bombs. And they'll say, look at all the Wahhabi terrorists everywhere. Who planted Wahhabism in that area? In Afghanistan, for example, back in the 1970s, women were driving and working and wearing mini skirts, and people were going on beaches in bikinis and hanging out, and it was a typical 1970s atmosphere, listening to rock and roll music, smoking joints, that kind of stuff. Hippies everywhere. You could see photos of Osama bin Laden or Tim Osman or whoever you want to call him back in that day. Of course, wearing typical 70s groovy clothes, and of course, that all changed when Israel started creating proxies and insurgents in the area, alongside the British, by the way, alongside the U.S. government, alongside many other, obviously, Western governments around the world. But this is an intelligence agency operation. There's no doubt. And with now them calling for the annexation of Syria, gee, that was fast. It only took since January. And now they've been pummeling cities like Damascus, ancient cities, and killing people. And it's very obvious that the shift is to then take over the region and annex all these places. It's a Greater Israel project. Smotrich himself said they'd have Lebanon and Syria soon, back in 2024. And voila, all these things happen right after. It should not shock anyone, yet here we are. We still have people, including people who call themselves conservatives, that defend one of the biggest pedophile capitals of the world, Israel, which harbors people that from extradition and shelters people from actual consequences for actions, and of course brags about sending migrants to the West. And then they'll say, well, Hamas is bad, and do you want these terrorists sent over to your country? Well, who do you think is causing a situation where that happens in the first place? And gee, I wonder why they're mad at your country after you bomb and pummel and kill their families, after being overthrown through proxy and starved out. I mean, look, I don't want mass migration, but I can see where it's coming from. I can see why it's happening, and it's a part of the demoralization of the public. Within the last months, IDF tanks and ground units have been observed a mere dozen miles from the outskirts of Damascus. Also, after literally hundreds of air raids destroying former Syrian Arab and Arab army bases, equipment, and anti-air defense units since the government overthrow. Cates referenced alleged threats from the Syrian sides, which has included the occasional rocket fired from unknown groups or locations. Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shaibani of the Jolani Shara regime has meanwhile blasted Israel for pursuing expansionist and partitionist goals. Indeed, some hardline Israeli ministers have even openly called for the Israeli capture and occupation of Damascus. Now, here we have one guy from the Jolani regime, when Jolani was an Israeli agent, essentially, but we have people that are working with him that are kind of getting pissed off at Israel. And gee, it's probably because they were used as insurgents and promised things, much like they did to the Kurds, the U.S. government did to the Kurds in Iraq, which, of course, didn't end well for those Kurdish people. And I know people who were translators between the US government, the British government, and ISIS, who were Kurdish, who I've met and had long conversations with. And by the way, they just talked about how the US was just, where do we send the weapons to ISIS? And where do we send the weapons to these insurgents? I know firsthand that this is a real thing, but I've talked to these people, and we see that they were promised all these things if they stood down and helped the US go up against Saddam Hussein. And we know how that ended, and it led to millions of deaths, by the way, all from the Israeli government, and especially Benjamin Netanyahu, who was just between tenors but was about to be the head of foreign policy in defense in Israel, going in front of Congress in 2002 and telling the U.S. Congress, we have to go to war with Iraq because they have weapons of mass destruction, and they're doing the same thing with Iran now. It's like Groundhog's Day. Meanwhile, Israel demolished 1,000 buildings in Gaza, and we're looking at about 100,000 people death toll. Israel's military's own data suggests 83% of Gaza killings are of civilians. Joint investigation finds that classified Israeli intelligence listed 8,900 deaths in May this year as active fighters at a time when total death toll was at least 53,000. We have horrifying imagery from Palestine and the Gaza Strip, massive bombs being dropped, which they did even during the so-called ceasefires, which aren't real. And the Iranian government recently acknowledged that there is no ceasefire and that they're continuously getting attacked. And of course, that is going to snowball. Well, we have them bombing a nursery school. Don't worry, it doesn't show any death in this video, so you don't have to look away. But a nursery school in Lebanon. And by the way, the Israeli government has claimed recently that bombing Lebanon does not violate their ceasefire with Lebanon. I mean, then what is a ceasefire if bombing them does not count as... I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Obviously, this is absurd. Israeli military bombs Yemen's capital Sana'a for second time this week. Israeli officials say they targeted a gathering of senior officials, a claim Yemeni officials have denied. Yeah, because they could call anything they want, and they'll get the benefit of the doubt on it because, Hamas is hiding in hospitals. Hamas, that they created what, in the tunnels under the buildings, which the Israeli government built in the first place. And they're being shielded behind civilians. Meanwhile, Israel literally puts their missile defense system and their Iron Dome missile system in apartment buildings in Tel Aviv. Who's hiding behind missiles? Turkey boasts about anti-Israel measures despite continued trade ties. I hate saying things about Turkey because I absolutely love Turkey. It's one of my favorite countries in the world. But I mean, they continue to they're banning Israeli military planes from airspace and calling them out in major protests with like 1 million people at them. But meanwhile, still taking weapons to go after Armenia from Israel, and also continuing to have massive trade deals with Israel. And by the way, helped these HTS insurgents into Syria. So again, I don't trust it. U.S. ambassador to UN defends Israeli hospital strike. Of course she does. Dorothy Shea has supported IDF claims it was targeting Hamas in the attack, which killed at least 20 people, including journalists. Well, remember when we saw the video that came out after the Israeli government said they killed all these Hamas insurgents and that they were shooting at them and attacking them. And then it turns out that people found the mass grave that the IDF dug for these people. And then they found a cell phone on one of them. And then they looked at the cell phone video. We played it in the previous video, showing that it was actually ambulances with flashing lights and people in vests that said medic on it and aid on it, and blew them up as they ran away, as they had all the flashing lights and all the evidence of them being obvious aid, and then lied about it. Of course, they will say whatever they need to say to continue. Like when they said that they were housing guns in the MRI room of a hospital. No, they weren't. You're not putting a bunch of guns next to a metallic machine that was in use. It's so ridiculous. Again, of course, they will say this. And of course, anything they say, the pro-Israeli people will bite onto it and say, oh, well, you must love terrorism then. It's like 2002, 2003 all over again. And I remember it well. The rhetoric was so intense and so ridiculous, and you must love terrorism, and there's going to be attacks everywhere and all that kind of stuff. And then we continue to see evidence of false flags. But U.S. revoking visas for Palestinian officials ahead of UN General Assembly. As I wrote on X, pretty obvious that the United States is not a sovereign state. No, they are bowing to Israel. And Benjamin Netanyahu has bragged about it on video that he didn't know was being taken in people's living rooms before. Again, they have control over the country and other countries via blackmail, via APAC, via the social collective, making sure that people will be attacked as anti-Semites if they dare to question Israel's power, which of course is subversive. Obviously, it's subversive, and we see that in countless countries around the Middle East. And of course, with the Greater Israel Project being pushed forward, which is a real thing, which Netanyahu has recently declared true after years of saying it's a conspiracy theory, and Smotrich is on top of that 100%. And then the Israeli government recently admitting that they want to build a third temple at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I mean, it's obvious. They tell us what they're doing. It's not some kind of conspiracy theory, but of course we still get attacked and we're told you must love terrorism. I know people that are like, I don't believe in any government, but then they're like, yeah, but Israel's right about Hamas. They need to take them down. Like they will. And it's the same thing with the left when it comes to Ukraine. Like, oh, well, if we have to stop big bad Russia, like why do we have to do anything? The we word, why do we have to do anything? I'm not involved in the mass murder of millions of people, and I don't want to be, and I never will want to be, and I will never fall for the inconsistency because of the emotional needs, the feeling of, oh, well, I feel like I need to be part of this, and the inconsistency of the masses due to the social construct, and of course being socially accepted into the collective. Fuck that. What they're doing is not just a genocide, it's just absolute atrocious example of lack of humanity. And of course, one of the things that they're trying to do is destroy the basis of humanity itself, which is independence, individualism, freedom. Those things are synonymous with humanity, and a part of that is to move us into that new digital system, digital IDs, of course, social credit scores, food rations. All this plays into the WEF's agenda, and people just want to. No one's consistent. Maybe this time it's okay. Maybe this time it's okay. It depends which side, and it depends on the context. No, it doesn't. War is bad, and the establishment knows exactly what they're doing. And this was scripted long ago. And all these ceasefire agreements are nonsense. And saying that Trump needs a Nobel Peace Prize after Netanyahu nominates him is nonsense, just like it was for Obama, just like it would be for Bush or Biden or any of these people. They're not the ones in charge. And the script was written long ago. The 7-country plan was written long ago. We know where this is going. It's all a matter of when, not if, because it is going to happen. And it's also a matter of what you as an individual can do to be safe in the face of it, to be secure in the face of it, to be prepared and ready and not succumb to the powers of the establishment under these unfortunate and, of course, tragic, really, historical situations that we're seeing arise. So, again, there's many ways to back out of this system. And I urge people, at the end of the day, the number one way to evade this issue, which is a total conquest, which will lead to your front door eventually, is to withdraw from that system. So I'm going to close this off and let people know, once again, I urge people to check out those links below. I make nothing off of this one, but I still want to make sure that people have something that they can stand by, that they can not be dependent on. They don't have to be dependent on the digital system. They don't have to be dependent on the food ration system, which will probably be poison. Go to heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off, as well as free shipping in the United States. So I urge people to go and check that out in the description. If you already have a bucket, get another one. There's no amount of money that you could put on being prepared. This is the world's first currency is food. This is your ability to save yourself and your family so you don't become dependent on them. No matter how awake you are, if you aren't prepared, you become dependent. And you don't want to be there. Also, make sure to check out Wild Pastures below. There, if you use our link, you'll get 20% off for life plus $15 off your first box. This is a great deal. 100% grass-fed and finished beef, pasture-raised pork, pasture-raised chicken, and wild-caught seafood. No mRNA, no GMOs, antibiotics, hormones, steroids, feedlots, pesticides, or chemicals of any kind. All raised on regenerative family farms in 48 U.S. states, delivered to your door, temperature-controlled, and customizable as you see fit. Again, this is great for your wallet. It's great for your health, and it's great for your local farmer first. So go and check that link in the description. Get prepared today. Kill two birds with one stone. No pun intended. Again, those links are below. We have a lot more links. One more I want to bring up here is firstnationalbullion.com / well, let me actually get this one right. Firstnationalbullion.com / schedule consult / okay, listen, the link is in the description. You have to use the exact link we have, or else you won't be able to reach the main page that we want you on, because we want to make sure that you get an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzalez and a complimentary investors package. This is a way to avoid the CBDC system and the digital system to come. There you could buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium, hold it in your hands, put it in a vault, put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system. Let them know in the comments of the forum that you found them at World Alternative Media, or WAM, WAM. Again, that's firstnationalbullion.com / schedule consult / has to be that link. And as always, my friends, I appreciate any help we can get. We have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. You guys have kept us alive and continue to, and we truly, truly appreciate any help we can get in this continued push against being censored, being shut down, being silenced. We refuse to be silent. We have Patreon and Subscribestar. If you pledge $4.99 a month or more, you'll get exclusive content. Make sure to send me messages on there to get personalized video responses. And of course, we have our PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com, our Bitcoin address, which you could scan on the screen here or check out in the text forum below. And of course, you can find our Cointree link in the description as well, where you can donate in multiple different cryptocurrencies, including privacy coins. So we got that. We got our Teespring store for merchandise, and you can find us on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. And on the bad guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, or at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we are banned. Hit that like button, share in social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, live freely, live by example, don't buy the bullshit. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.